Thank you for joining us. I know most of you here, but not everybody. I'm Kehli, I'm the assistant director, and today we are proud to have Kehli Hazlett here as our presenter. Kehli is a fifth-generation Montana native who was raised in Butte. She's passionate about food history, and she currently serves as a director of tourism for Butte's Convention and Visitors Bureau and Tourism Business Improvement District. Kehli earned her Master's of Science in Technical Communications from Montana Tech in 2013. Her thesis, The Foodways of Butte, Montana, Food and Culture in an Industrial American City, explores how the city's distinctive culinary traditions reflect and preserve its rich ethnic and industrial heritage. She is currently pursuing a doctorate in higher education leadership at the University of Montana. So welcome, Kehli.
Yay, Kehli.
Hi guys, I am so, okay. We'll make sure we're wearing all the things. They gotta be able to hear me. So my name is Kehli Hazlett. If you don't know a Kankelborg, you might know a Sullivan, which my mom's a Sullivan. So, because people go, how are you related to Butte? I said, well, my dad's a Kankelborg. I married a Hazlett, but I said my mom's a Sullivan. And they're like, oh, she's a Butte Sullivan. Sounds about right. Sounds about right. So my name is Kehli. I'm going to talk to you. Yeah, Frank's my dad. Frank's my dad. Oh, you went to high school with him? He's trouble, isn't he?
He's also trouble.
Oh, I would digress. He's too old to be in trouble. So my love for all of my life has been food. I love food. Like, people go, it's weird that you like food so much. I'm like, well, it's the one thing that you do every day that sustains you and gets you through the day. Sleep and food. And I do like a good nap, but you really can't write a paper on a nap. So I talk about food, especially food from Butte, and how it's traveled from other countries to here in Butte, Montana. So, oh, hi, welcome. I'm going to do some food trivia with you about Montana, about Butte, and then just overall arching as we go into different subjects. Does everybody know what the James Beard Award is?
Yes.
All right. What state has the most James Beard Award winners?
I would say it's here.
It is Montana. We actually have two that are going to be presented today, the Pig King and Matt's Place. Matt's Place just got bought, so I'm glad and happy I can announce that today, which we're very excited about. So let me tell you what a foodway is, so that you're aware. So foodways is the study of where styles of food preparation originate and where they travel to. Foodways are pathways that connect cultures together through time and place. From a person from any point along the pathway, food expresses cultural value. Did you know food had a cultural value? Especially in the United States. How many have you seen, what does M-Arch mean? With yellow. McDonald's. I mean, you could say Safeway and you can see the sign in your head. Food conveys message, and all of us have a different idea. If I were to say Butte-Silver, someone might say, I'm saying this wrong, first of all, number one. And it's said completely different, number two. But all of us have our own experiences. I was actually taught to bake Butte-Silver. in our home with my grandmother. So like it conveys different memories for all of us. So when I talk about certain restaurants, all of you are going to have memories. If you've been there or not, or there's a reason why you didn't go there, you know, that kind of thing, because food is part of our culture. It's a part of who we are. We've traveled all over the world, and food follows us. So let's start with the Peking. I have to make sure I check my dates, because I know a lot of you are from Butte, and I've sourced these, so we're good. In 1911, in our Chinatown area, or known as China Alley, the Peking noodle parlor was built along with their gambling parlor. How many of you knew there was a gambling parlor underneath the Peking? Okay, a couple of you. If you're walking up the stairs and you're trying to look in those windows, you might see some of their gambling machines that are still down below. But of course, we're going up because we're going to the restaurant and bar, where the Tam family has run this restaurant over 100 years. It is the oldest American family-run restaurant in the United States. So you have to think about it. It's been for a while. There was a restaurant in San Francisco that had the title for a while, but they closed down. How many of you believe the fortune cookie is American? It is. How about chop suey? Is chop suey Chinese or American? American. It's American. So let's talk a little bit about that, because it goes into our mining history here in Butte. So heading into the 1870s, 1880s, we're looking at California during its gold rush. At that point in time, a lot of Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean people moved to San Francisco to make better lives for themselves. So what was great about these restaurants is Chinese are a community, and they're very community oriented. So if somebody was sick, or if somebody needed a meal, most of the time the wives or the husbands would cook meals for the whole entire neighborhood for those who couldn't afford to eat or needed support helping them, like the elderly. And so when this started taking flight, they all started opening, not all of them, most of them either worked on the railroads, in the mines, or they cooked. And this is where chop suey is considered to be originated. It's in San Francisco. It was taking everything that was left over for the day. You would think they refer to it as the trash, but that's not what the word means. It means leftovers. And so they took all of the leftovers over. They used a lot of meat scraps, because Americans had a large diet of meat, and we'll talk about that with Matt's place. But the idea that they needed to feed these big miner guys, and they had leftovers from where they cooked, they would sell it in a plate or a pail. Now, what we think today as a Chinese takeout container is actually called an oyster pail. It was used to shuck oysters, and you put them in and you carry them wherever you want, you know, that kind of thing. But it actually spreads out to a plate. So back in the mining days, with the help of becoming industrial America through 1911 through the 1950s, they started putting food in the oil pails, so that when the guys picked it up, they could take it home and open it, and it would go on a plate. This would eventually travel with families. Families like Danny Tam and his family. He traveled with sponsorship from his family from China to here in the United States. Now, he gets the American name Danny Wong, which we later call him Danny Tam, but his Chinese name I forgot right now. So, but it's his family, from his great uncles all the way up, have run the Peking and parts of the China Alley areas. So, my question to you is, how many stairs do you have to walk up to get to the Peking?
A lot.
27. 27, if somebody asks you, 27. It is both the front and the back. There's no getting around it. When people go, is there an elevator? I'm like, no, we're just gonna order in and we'll bring it to you. So I want you to think about that. That's the first takeout food we see as Americans. during the industrial, and through the industrial America. So I want you to think about that as we move into other forms of food. Next, I'm going to Pork Chop John's, one of our favorite restaurants, especially on West Mercury. John Berkland started selling pork chops here in Butte on a cart in 1924. Now, where do you think pork chops originated? Or pork chop sandwich? Chicago. Someone is very correct over there. Actually, it was Germany. So schnitzel, the idea of breading and frying something, came from Germany and traveled with its people to Chicago, Illinois, where there's a lot of industrial things going on. Businesses are being built, a lot of steel, a lot of buildings. So that's when we kind of go into this idea of what industrial America looked like. You had a shift, excuse me, darn allergies. This idea of industrial America with people going to work when the whistle blows and getting out, and you need to eat something really quick during that lunchtime that you had. Now, most of the time it was probably 10 to 15 minutes, not what we have today, thanks to unions. I know if you all don't like unions, I gotta tell you, they did some good things. So the whistle would blow, you have 10 to 15 minutes to go get your food and come back in. And that's when things started to be more on bread and sandwiches for Americans. So John was in Chicago and he brought the pork chop sandwiches because he saw the stalls and started selling them outside of the mines. This one obviously went very well, as you know. So this idea of breading something and frying it comes from German backgrounds, so does the hanger steak, that kind of idea. But a lot of those came from German roots and moved to America with the people. All right, now let's talk about Matt's Place. So what's going on in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s? What was that? Automobiles. Whoever got that, you get extra points. I don't have anything extra for you, but extra points for you. So the automobile becomes very prominent here in the United States. So around the 1930s, Matt's Place was created. It was right off the freeway. It was easy to get on and off. You could get some gas at Town Pump across the way, and you had car hops and all the different things that creates this 1950s Americana persona. Again, hamburgers came from Hamburg, Germany, came through Illinois, and then stopped here in Butte. And that's where Matt's Place originated. So what does Matt's Place offer that was very big in the 1950s? Ice cream, hop service. Well, there's surprise, there's always a surprise. But the idea of this, and this will resonate with most of you, is that it's a square meal. And we'll talk about that with Lydia's too. It's a dish combined, that you have a salad or antipasto, meat, potatoes, vegetables, and dessert. That was the American square meal that our pyramid was created off. Remember the old pyramid that we used to be like, we need 2 of these every day, you need 2 of these every day. Fruits, vegetables, you need like 10 of those. It's changed a whole lot now. It doesn't look like that anymore, but that's where the square meal came from. So this idea is cemented in what we have with car hops, with 1950s. What's a TV show from that we all think about when we think of the 1950s?
Happy Days.
Happy Days. This idea of what America was at its peak. Not saying we're not doing well right now, but it's a totally different peak. It's a peak in our culture, a peak in advertising. When we think about Coca-Cola, or Pepsi, that's when they first came out, was in the 1950s, where they were in companies and really sharing with other people. So when you think of Coca-Cola, what do you think of?
Oh, Pepsi.
Fair enough. Wow. Yes, it was in the original Coca-Cola. I'm very aware. Yes, it was originally in the original Coca-Cola formula. They switched it out for a couple things. Obviously. Or I'm in big trouble today. Because I have this morning. What else do you think of when you think of Coca-Cola? Carbonation.
Sugar.
What about
A burger and fries.
the sign of burger and fries? Yes, we're going the right way. What about Christmas?
That's what he said.
Polar bears. Nate, you're correct. It's the polar bears. So Coca-Cola only used to be a summer drink and at these burger places. With the inclusion of the polar bears in Coca-Cola's product marketing, how often do we drink Coke or a soda now? All the time, because they wanted to make it all season. But at that point in time, in the 1950s, it was considered a summer drink. So, and this is obviously, you know, the formulas have changed per se on the sodas, and there are different chemicals that they use to make it taste like the original without using cocaine. But it certainly gives us another layer of how we started to embrace our other cultures into our own culture and made it Americana. Because they weren't putting schnitzel into a sandwich. They weren't putting burgers, that we call now, into sandwiches. It was more of a hanger steak, a meat that was basically pounded down and cooked to make something more of nothing, you know, making it more. Okay, so number 4 is Lydia's. She opened her doors in 1946 out on the flat. However, where was she originally from? Meaderville. And she worked at the casino in the back cooking meals and learned her trade. From there, she made the money enough to build what we look at all the way out on the flat as a full service restaurant with alcohol, now they have gambling and food. So this idea of the roadhouse, and that's what it is, it's a roadhouse, comes from the 1920s. What was happening in the 1920s that made Italian restaurants in the United States stand out longer than any other restaurant for that time? Prohibition. And so what happened was Italians were making grappa, which is a form of wine. It's okay, but if you want a glass of wine and you can't have wine, you didn't really follow the prohibition the way you were supposed to. We'll just say my family has a house on the hill. We found a still in our basement. So this idea of what American culture looked like, the roadhouses, Lydia's is one of those prime examples. And that has all the recipes from the original people that owned the casino with the antipasti, but the potato salad are considered American additions to that. What is the most imported food to the United States? Oh, I wish. No.
Where's the beef?
Pizza, you're correct. Not pizza in that sense, but Italian imports. So when I talk about Lydia's, it's not only just a restaurant. It's part of our American ideals. I mean, pizza is a huge snack that we have here in the United States. A lot of people put American culture with pizza and burgers and like Starbucks, coffee, Americanized version of the United States. You know, when people look at the United States, they go, well, do you drink coffee or tea? I'm like, well, I can do either, which one you choose. And when you're other places where they're like, oh, you'll drink tea with us, I'm like, fair enough, yeah, in Scotland, they're like, you're American, you probably want coffee, and I'm like, no, tea is fine, because they're used to this idea that Americans don't really change their point of view and need coffee all the time when we are just as adaptable as other cultures. But we took the Italian food and we made it ours. Like you have Chicago pizza. In California, they have something called Zachary's pizza, which is about as thick as the Chicago-style pizza, but you really have to eat it with a fork and knife because it's even bigger than that. So, I want you to start thinking about that in your identity. When you were growing up, was pizza part of your everyday, or did you know people that had everyday things? No. This actually transitioned into the 1980s, where we got Four Turtles, pizza, loving, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, back in the 1980s came prominence, and pizza sales started to surge from those four lovely turtles. All right, I am on my last one. So we're going to talk about the pasty. How many people believe the pasty is a Butte staple? Like, we own it, we have everything.
And actually, originally, like in the, or, well, you know, European first, and then it migrated to.
How about if I told you it's not European?
Did it originate in the?
Okay, the pasty originated in Cornwall, England, and that came over with our minders. That eventually went over to Michigan, the Upper Peninsula area. However, the Finnish say they own the pasty in Michigan. That it's a Finnish dish. Wait for it. Butte, Montana, the Irish claim it's theirs here in beautiful Butte, Montana. Well, a lot of people are like, it's Irish. I'm like, well, it's more Cornish, which is English, but that's okay.
When the miners got one, took it to work, and we did, it was great. What do they call it?
A letter from home.
Yeah. And who said that first?
Probably Welsh. No?
It was an Irish guy. I'm sorry, I hate to be the know-it-all on that one, but yeah, when you research things and you learn, you're like, it was from an Irish guy who sent it to his family. And we have documentation that they called it a letter from him. So, the pasty is really a part of Butte in our culture. It started Cornwall, England. But what if I told you there are other versions of kind of like the pasty?
Every other city has, you know, a pastry that's filled with like meat or some other filling.
Well, the Finnish have something called kalukako. Kalukako is a fish pie that looks exactly like a pasty. Dim sum, if you're looking at the pot sticker, when you think about it, pocket pies are a part of our worldview. At the same time, these items have become more considered American because we are known for our grab it and go society. People have been trying to copy, I kid you not, in Japan right now, they're trying to work out how to do a drive-through in their country. It's very fun and very interesting to read because there are reasons why it sometimes works somewhere else and it doesn't work there.
What did you call that? A something stir?
A what?
They're trying to figure out how to make a.
Drive-through.
Oh,
So
a
like burgers, like
drive-through.
McDonald's, like doing
Oh,
a
okay.
drive-through.
Oh, okay.
Where Americans, we've had drive-throughs started in the 1930s. Car hops, and then they moved it into more notable things like drive-throughs. I don't know any fast food or fast casual place, even Panera has a drive-through. And that's ingrained in their culture, where in Japan, they're still trying to figure out how they can use it for their country. Paula, did you see it? No, it's in Tokyo right now. They're test driving 2 different spots for drive-thrus. So what sums up, in summary, what sums up my talk? That we as Americans, no matter where we came from, have taken things and made them ours. In that sense, no matter if we were from that country or not. We were community members when somebody had a husband die in the mines, or you had to make pasties for your husbands. Everybody worked together for the same cause. We're gonna make pasties together. I'm growing potatoes. You're gonna do rutabaga. Someone's gonna do onions. And it depends on what people had available to eat. I mean, there's stories of women who would put little slices of meat at the end of their pasties for their husbands. So their thing didn't have any meat in it at all most of the time because that was very expensive. But it goes back to our history as Americans with our love of cattle and beef and wanting something more for ourselves. So the wives would cook little pieces of meat on the end. So when their husbands got to the end, they got to show it off, their big piece of meat, and they got to eat it. It's about being a community underneath the grounds during copper and during wars, and being able to, you might not speak the person's language, but being able to come back and, you know, try to help them out when you're underneath ground. Butte is a community, and that is told by our food. So yes, we can complain that no, it's from Cornwall, England, but we can say that also the pasty's Irish. It's also Finnish, it's also Chinese, it's also South American, it's Mexican with empanadas. I want you to, when you go back through your memory of memorable foods that your family created and still continue on, I want you to think about Butte and how it embraced the difference. Because there was no difference between us then and now. We just have made food into symbols and in ways for us to start thinking about it, because the next generation, how are we going to share that with them, and how are we going to pass it forward as we continue on and grow and change over the years. And I think Butte has done a really good job with that. So thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Speaking of, like ethnic food, you didn't mention sarma. We used to have cabbage rolls.
Cabbage rolls, yeah.
And when I was a little kid, my mom would make the best sarma in town.
Well, I don't know. My grandmother makes some good sarma too. I'm gonna have to. She was second place.
When we were little kids, we'd come home, and we knew what she was making, but we have to ask her. What's for dinner, Mom? And she'd say, pig's ass and cabbage.
So, what tradition is your family, or what background?
Croatian.
Croatian. Okay, my grandmother was also Croatian, although at that time it was Austria.
Austria-Hungary, yeah.
Yeah, Austria-Hungary. So, when you think about foods, especially when people made special foods for you, like, I want you to think about that. Sarma, like, I'm gonna put hands down my grandmother wins, but then you're gonna say, no, your mom wins, and that's a Butte story right there. Because we're all gonna say, no, your mother made better povatitsa than my mother, and you know, you can go back and forth for hours. So I want you to think about that. That's how Butte encompasses food. It's the one thing that we had when we didn't have a whole lot. So.
Oh, I was just wondering, I didn't quite hear a lot about the Matt's drive-in. So how did Matt's kind of more or less get opened up?
It was May Lawrence, and May's family helped her get the money for the down payment for her house. But the hamburger came through Germany, through Illinois, and then made it to
And
Butte.
there's this beautiful apartment, I guess.
Yeah, that's May's house. That's where they live. That's where they raise their kids.
Yeah.
Matt's was the first drive-in in downtown.
Yep, it was the first drive-in
Before,
in
like,
Tampa.
Tinkerbell and Don
Before
Murray.
any of it, it was
Wow.
one of them.
So Kelly, you said that Matt's is sold, did it sell to people that are gonna open it as a restaurant?
That I don't know. I just heard it out of the chamber before I did my talk.
Yes, they sold it to a couple from Idaho. I talked to a family member, and
Okay.
they're hoping to keep it the same. The only thing that they're not going to make ice cream. They're just going to purchase their ice cream, through Wilcox or something. But they're hoping to.
Yeah.
And then they have to do some repairs in the kitchen because it's, I don't know, yeah, there's only 2 sinks and they're supposed to have like 3 sinks. But I hope it'll work out for everybody.
Okay, now as the
It's been
professor,
gone too long.
I'm going to force it this way. So how many of you thought I got half the history wrong of Butte?
Have what?
I was waiting for this. Someone to raise their hand and be like, Kelly, that is not the right date. I'm like, I have sources. I can provide sources. So,
You did have town pump wrong. You said when people in the 30s drove off the highway, you said the interstate, or the freeway, there wasn't one.
it was a
And they
highway.
go to different places, like town pump, well, there was no town pump in the.
Actually, sir, there was. Right next to it, where it started. The first one, town pump was right in front of the Civic Center, right on the left.
I saw that
Wasn't in the
picture.
30s, more like the 60s.
Yeah.
50s.
I just
Right
saw
up the
that.
street.
I just did the research for it and posted on my website. That's the problem with teachers. We're always learning. We're always making sure that we're correct. 1954, but there was a gas station there. It might not have been a town pump, but there was a gas station there. That's why.
No, there was a bar, Cassidy's bar.
Well, there was a reason why people got off on the side of the road. Most of the time it was for gas and for
That was the highway. That
Yeah.
was the main highway.
See, I told you, everybody's a naysayer. No, I worked with town pump on a post. And because I am, of course, a researcher and a professor in my spare time now. Like, I research these things all the time. Butte history does not stop with one conversation. It continues. We all go back in and look at it. Now, if you guys are interested in reading more of my paper, you can go online, or you can check out a copy. I have one in about semiotics, which is, I kind of brought that in with the imagery and the signage of 1950s America. So you can read through that, or you can just read the history part and just close the book, because I'm fine with that too.
And my mom, her family lived here in the 30s, and she remembers pork chop John's, when she was alive, carts that they
Yeah.
bought sandwiches off. And she remembers they had a bone in them then.
Yep.
Is that true? Because it seems like it might have been an accident if it was all that fried meat.
It's, just like anything else, when somebody says boneless fish, you still have to be aware that there's still bones. Sometimes they miss some things and you ended up with the bone.
She just remembered a pork chop bone, and they used to buy them from the carts.
Yeah, no, it was in a sandwich and it was,
No, it was in a sandwich.
yeah. But most of the time the bone was taken off, or should have been.
I don't know if your research also covered the tamale, Trezolinos, and they used to sell those by carts too.
It did. The problem is with anything, when you write it, there has to be a scope, or you could go for, I could have 100 different foods listed for Butte, and they would be like, Kelly, we really need to stop because you need to graduate with your master's. But tamales was on there. There was a lot of different kinds of food trucks. Remember, there were grocery stores on every corner. There used to be a bar, a church in every neighborhood. You went so many blocks and there was a bar and a church, and then your grocery store.
Except in my neighborhood.
Which neighborhood was that?
Up on East Second and Emma,
What do you mean you have a bar over there?
I'm talking about those grocery stores. We didn't have one, we had 3.
Oh, well, I know there's more, but just for the overall.
You don't see that anymore.
I live up on the hill. We have a bar, a church, and Excelsior Meats. So,
I used to have to cut articles for one of my jobs
mhm.
that mentioned Butte, and they were like from the New York Times, and there were endless articles that had Butte mentions from different publications, like high-ranking publications like New York Times and other.
We still do. We actually had a New York Times writer here, beginning of fall, and I did an interview with him. So, I mean, there's lots of different people coming and going, but what I want you to take away from this is go learn about your food history. You know, when people talk about, you know, this is what my grandmother brought with her, you know, it was probably, my grandmother had a big bowl that she needed bread in, and that's all she had, along with recipes. And all of these recipes are oral traditions, so my grandmother never told us the right recipe, so we had to figure it out. So that kind of idea of going back, oral traditions and how important they are, also this idea of community in Butte and how we share our food. Which for anywhere else, I've never seen a community share so much of their culture and their tradition with others by making it also Butte history. So thank you guys again for your time.
Thank you.